Commons is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the
I'm only
balance in
soft when I like somebody. The rest of y'all get this gangster shit, bitch.
Today's Democratic Party believes that government has an important role to play in society. It fights against economic inequality. It advocates policies that battle racial and gender discrimination. But it wasn't always this way. The Democratic Party was once the party of white supremacy, supporting slavery and the Ku Klux Klan. To understand how the party made such a huge shift, you have to go back to its origins in the mid-1820s, when it sprung up supporting the presidential candidacy of a popular former general, Andrew Jackson. Jackson was an outsider, challenging the political establishment and the elites of his day, and his critics disparaged him as a jackass. But Jackson embraced the animal as a symbol of determination, and donkeys started appearing in newspapers to represent him and his followers. In the 1828 presidential election, which saw record-breaking popular participation, Jackson won in a landslide victory. So his supporters argued that they, and not the old elites, represented the popular will of the country, and they started calling themselves the Democratic Party. Jackson's administration immediately began expelling Native Americans living east of the Mississippi River, an issue that defined the new administration. After he signed the Indian Removal Act into law in 1830, 5 large tribes were rounded up and forcibly marched into territories and camps further west. And the Democrats' ambitions didn't stop there. In the 1840s, the party adopted the doctrine of manifest destiny, the idea that Americans, white Americans, were divinely entitled to dominate the whole North American continent. Democratic President James K. Polk put this idea into action, massively expanding U.S. holdings by annexing Texas, acquiring Oregon, and winning much of what's now the southwestern U.S. in a war with Mexico. But soon afterward, national politics devolved into bitter controversy over whether new states entering the Union should be permitted to allow slavery. Democrats said they should, since their support base was strongest in slaveholding states. Yet a new Northern party, the Republicans, sprang up in opposition to expanding slavery any further. When Republican Abraham Lincoln won the presidency, the South seceded and the Civil War began. Once the Civil War was over, the Republican Party was bitterly unpopular among white Southerners who wanted to maintain supremacy over former slaves. So the Democratic Party promised to limit federal government intervention on behalf of black citizens. Democrats became effectively the only political party in the South, aided by intimidation and suppression of black voters. Democrats also won on state and local levels, leading to the constant abuse of the rights of black citizens. As the 20th century began, the country was changing, and the Democratic Party was changing too. A handful of individuals and corporations had grown enormously rich and powerful, using their vast fortunes to influence politics. And as a reaction to this, some reformers began pushing an agenda of progressivism, arguing that the government should take more of a role in regulating big businesses and improving ordinary people's lives. At first, these progressive reformers were present in both parties. But it was Democrat Woodrow Wilson who won the presidency in 1912 and put much of this agenda into action over Republican resistance. So the Democratic Party became the main home for progressives, and the Republican Party became more the party of business. But it was the Great Depression of the 1930s that sealed the Democratic Party's new identity as the party of government activism.
Be the size and shape of a baseball card, actually has 63 faces on it. 13 of them white, 50 of them are African Americans. Well, they were all state legislators from South Carolina. They were all Republicans, and this card was actually put out by the KKK, so all the members of the KKK would know exactly who they should target and who they should eliminate. This wasn't just something that the KKK targeted African Americans. It actually was a movement of the Democrat Party trying to stop the Republican Party, which believed in equality for all.
Let's tap in. Now, Democrats should be dismantled and considered a terroristic organization. I'm going to prove this claim beyond a reasonable doubt, and I'm going to end not with this exact slide that I'm starting with, but with a slide but with a slide similar to it, so that you can fully get where I'm coming from. Now, with that being said, here's some more history for your ass, okay? And fuck school. Okay, they need to just let me teach. Okay, they need to just let me fuck school. Because when school failed, and let me say this real quick, right? Whenever they talk about the South, especially Democrats, they always want you to think the South was so racist, right? But what Democrats fail to mention is they the motherfuckers they talking about. So we've all been to school before, right? Yes. And we hear about the Civil War. And white people, I'm going to need y'all to stop that lie that the Civil War was to free the slave. Please stop that lie. It was not. Y'all were fighting over the same shit y'all always fight over. That the goddamn taxes is too high. And British is trying to take over in a foreign nation at that time, which was Great Britain, was trying to take over the country. It had nothing to do with niggas being free. Why? Because black people fought, they said we fought our own way out of slavery. So let's just agree on real history for a second. Now that we can agree on real history, let me defend decent white people, okay? Now that black people's real story has been told, let's tell the real story of decent white people in America, okay? Now, the Democrats created and own the Confederate flag. This is from June 26, 2015, National Review. Haley, a rising Republican star, is correct to lower the Confederate flag. It has reflected Democratic racial oppression since it was stitched together in 1861 and has been hoisted by Democrats ever since. Now, why is this important? You would never think that Democrats created this fucking flag. You know why? Because Democrats make you think Republicans are racist. Democrats make you think that Republicans are the negative party. And Democrats love to make you think that whites in the South are just so racist and evil and you should fear them. And they want you to think that the North is, you know, a safe haven. But what I'm here to tell you is slaves did not run to the North when they were free. They ran to the South. The Gullah Warriors, the Seminole Indians they ran to the South because the South was less racist than the North. And so these motherfuckers lied. And most of y'all see this flag, right? And the reason this is important is because most of y'all niggas see this flag and you automatically assume if somebody's white and they from the South and they got a Southern accent, you associate them with this flag. And you would never associate Hillary Clinton with it. You would never associate Cuomo with it. You would never associate LeBron James with it because he's telling you to support Democrats. You would never associate D.L. Hughley with it because he's telling you to support Democrats. But what your stupid ass don't know is this fucking flag was created by Democrats. Now, why is this important? Because I just told y'all in the video that I did that got deleted, Democrats created the fucking Ku Klux Klan. So you see the Confederate flag here. You see the Confederate flag here. You also see a Freemasonic flag. So when y'all see this, please do not think this is a symbol of just white supremacy. It's a symbol of Freemasonry. Now you might say, Pharaoh, why is this information important? Because the fucking KKK was created to destroy Republicans. Why? Because the Republican Party was created by black people. Yes, it is predominantly white today, but that's because, as you're about to hear, the Ku Klux Klan lynched all of the black Republicans and then terrorized the black community and told them they would only stop terrorizing them if they voted in regards to and on behalf of Democratic policy. So the KKK was created and still is today being used as the goon squad for democracy. Okay? And the reason you can't see that is because white supremacy and racism is the fall guy in the veil of Freemasonry. So when you look at this shit, you don't see Freemasonry. You just see racist white people.
Which political party founded the KKK?
The Republican Party, of course.
Wrong.
Wrong?
The Democrat Party.
Are you serious? For real?
You know which party abolished slavery?
Which party? Yeah, that was the Democrat Party.
It was actually the Republicans. Republicans were the anti-slavery party established in 1860 with Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Which political party gave African Americans the right to vote?
You can go with the Democrat.
Republican.
Republican. Yeah, well, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
We have something with a great name, a great mission, and my Democratic friends use it to brand America as racist versus what the Democratic Party has done. So let me give you a little history, because you're right. Anti-lynching bills have been in place for a long time, stopped every single time by the Democratic Party. It was the Democratic Party that fought for slavery. It was the Democratic Party that fought against the anti-lynching bill in 1918, put together by a Missouri Republican. It was the Democratic Party that put together Jim Crow laws. KKK was Jim Crow. By the way, Wall Street, Black Wall Street, destroyed by Democrats. The filibuster, you're right, it's been used to stop civil rights. Democrats have used it to do that. We have something that should be bipartisan right now, a bill that makes sense against anti-lynching. My concern is this: we have a lot of young Black boys today that are lost, that have been raised in families that are dysfunctional, a lot because of Democratic policies. And they decide to make a mistake, beat somebody up because they hate white people, which they're being taught to do. They can come under this lynching. They have not killed anybody, but they conspired and they've hurt them. They could be put away for life. Why are we changing the definition of lynching when it's so obvious what it is? Is it because we're not getting enough across our country to bring attention to the divisiveness that we're trying to get from my friends across the aisle? We've been fighting against this evil for a long time, and we've come a long, long way, my friends. All we have to do is look around this room. We see how far we've come.
I save this for the end for a reason. The wildly misleading, well, the Democrats have always been the party of the racists, always been the party of the KKK, always been the party of Jim Crow and poll tests and literacy tests or poll tax and literacy tests.
For a century to begin telling the story, right? African Americans start out when they become essentially enfranchised. They do so because of the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, and therefore African Americans sort of by default become Republicans because that is the party of emancipation. The Republican Party, while it's in favor of emancipation, is not really a natural place to put African Americans, especially as the Republican Party goes through the late 1800s and early 1900s and goes through some sort of realignments inside itself and turns away from a possible progressive move with Theodore Roosevelt and becomes increasingly in the early 20th century more the party of white-collar business interest, upper-class interest. But now you get African Americans moving into the North where they can vote, and they begin to find the appeal of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal very attractive. They begin increasingly to identify with the Democratic Party. Doesn't happen overnight, right? Partisan attachments take a while to erode during the late 30s and early 40s and late 40s to turn from a party that had been held hostage to states' rights in the South to one that was willing to embrace civil rights. You see that in the behavior of Harry S. Truman, right, who's going to integrate the armed services by executive order after World War II. You see that in the 1948 Democratic Convention. Then Senator Hubert Humphrey from Minnesota gets up and says, it's time for us to walk out of the shadow of states' rights into the bright sunshine of civil rights. At the same time, the Republican Party is struggling with its history of emancipation and civil rights. You get someone like Dwight Eisenhower, who says that integration, desegregation should go slow. That sort of personifies some of this movement of the Republican Party away from its traditional belief in civil rights and extending rights to African Americans. Especially by the mid-1960s, you get Lyndon Johnson, who's going to take the lead on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and by that point, the ship is cooked, right? The Republican Party opposes it. Its standard bearer, Barry Goldwater, opposes it in 1964. He calls it a piece of communistic legislation. At that point, I think the door closes, right? At that point, African Americans who are politically active are Democrats.
Committee will please come to order. Judge, it's a tough day and tough night for you, I know. Let me ask, do you have anything you'd like to say before we begin? I understand that your preference is, which is totally and completely understandable, that we go 1 hour tonight, 30 minutes on each side. Am I correct in that?
That's right.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Senator, I would like to start by saying unequivocally, uncategorically, that I deny each and every single allegation against me today that suggested in any way that I had conversations of a sexual nature or about pornographic material with Anita Hill, that I ever attempted to date her, that I ever had any personal sexual interest in her, or that I in any way ever harassed her. A second, and I think more important point, I think that this today is a travesty. I think that it is disgusting. I think that this hearing should never occur in America. This is a case in which this sleaze, this dirt, was searched for by staffers of members of this committee, was then leaked to the media, and this committee and this body validated it and displayed it at prime time over our entire nation. How would any member on this committee, any person in this room, or any person in this country would like sleaze said about him or her in this fashion, or this dirt dredged up, and this gossip and these lies displayed in this manner? How would any person like it? The Supreme Court is not worth it. No job is worth it. I'm not here for that. I'm here for my name, my family, my life, and my integrity. I think something is dreadfully wrong with this country when any person in this free country would be subjected to this. This is not a closed room. There was an FBI investigation. This is not an opportunity to talk about difficult matters privately or in a closed environment. This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street. That's number one. There's a consensus on that. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. That's the sad truth. I'm the guy that said rehabilitation, when it occurs, we don't understand it and notice it. And even when we notice it and we know it occurs, we don't know why. So you cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. It's a shame, but we don't know how to rehabilitate. But there is a consensus, and I will cease. A, we must make the streets safer. I don't care why someone is a malfactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior. That's why we do in this bill. We have drug treatment and we have other treatments to try to deal with it. But they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist, and we must deal with that.
Senator's time has expired. Senator from Delaware.
Madam President, I yield myself 3 minutes. Madam President, it's been a real pleasure to work with my friend from Texas. We most times are on opposite sides of issues. This time we're on the same side, but it is. I realize in this business it's difficult for us to, notwithstanding the fact we're personally cooperating on this bill, for us to dismiss the prospect of some partisanship. Let me set the record straight on this bill. The underlying bill, which is now the Biden-Hatch bill, was the Biden bill. A guy named Biden wrote that bill, and he wrote that bill by going down and sitting down with the President of the United States of America, not with his Attorney General, not with anyone else, with Bill Clinton, President of the United States of America, who between the time he got elected in November until the time he was sworn in, called me at my home on 6 separate occasions, and he unfortunately doesn't need a lot of sleep. Sometimes literally, and I say this on the record, as late as 11:30 at night, to discuss why I wasn't moving quicker on the Biden crime bill from before. I sat with him, not with his Attorney General. He wanted 100,000 policemen. He does not view this as a social issue as opposed to trying to bring peace and security to the streets. As governor of the state of Arkansas, he presided over, as governor, the execution of individuals within the state and the death penalty. He supports the death penalty. He is the fellow who insisted that I bump this up from initially to when I said, where are we going to get the money? He said, well, all I know is I want 100,000 cops. I made that commitment. He had endorsed the Biden crime bill as a candidate when he ran. He is the one who talks about the need for stiffer penalties. So notwithstanding the fact some of the old Democrats and former presidents who were Democrats before Carter, I suspect, I don't know who we're talking about here, but in the old days, it is true. When Richard Nixon was running for president, Richard Nixon used to talk about law and order, and the Democratic response was law and order with justice, whatever either one of those meant. I never knew. I was running then in 1972. I didn't think Richard Nixon knew what it meant, and I didn't think the opposition knew what it meant. This president is very, very straightforward and simple. He knows there are 2 basic steps here. One step is you must take back the streets. And you take back the streets by more cops, more prisons, more physical protection for the people. He also understands what my friend from Texas understands, and he doesn't talk a lot about, but he signed on to in this bill. He also understands there's a need to keep people who are first-time offenders, who are nonviolent offenders, or who are potential time offenders who haven't gotten, I yield myself an additional 3 minutes, who, in fact, are people who are getting themselves into the crime stream for the first time, that they should be diverted from the system. So I hope this crime bill, when it passes, the Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended, once and for all, this notion that is a hangover from the 60s, that somehow Democrats are weak on crime and Democratic presidents are weak on crime and Republicans are tough on crime. The truth is, every major crime bill since 1976 that's come out of this Congress, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill, and has had a majority vote of the Democratic members of the United States Senate on the bill.
We're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who were going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you do it? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, you're a
bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did. And back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off. Well, he came off. And he said, I'll meet you outside. My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, I'll be waiting for you. He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There was a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, what am I going to do? He said, come down here in the basement where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, you walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, you may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head. I said, you kidding me? He said, no, if you don't come back. And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. And I walked up to my car. And they had, in those days, you used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty. And I looked at him, but I was smart then. I said, first of all, I said, when I tell you get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, you apologize to me? I said, I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said. He said, okay, closed the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again. And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand, and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool.
The kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
You called out President Clinton for defending Secretary Clinton's use of the term super predator back in the 90s when she supported the crime bill. Why did you call him out?
Because it was a racist term and everybody knew it was a racist term.
No conscience.
It's a very well thought out crime bill that is both smart and tough.
No empathy.
Called black youth super predators in 1994. Please explain the record.
Because it was a racist term and everybody knew it was a racist term.
Reparations for black people.
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country.
You know what else I'm sick of? You know what else I'm sick of? I'm sick of hearing he's a threat to democracy, he's a threat to democracy. How the fuck is he a threat to democracy? How? Because this isn't a fucking democracy, it's a fucking republic, and I'm tired of hearing you say this shit. This is not a democracy, this is a republic, and how is he a threat to the republic? Because he was there for 4 years and he gave you the greatest fucking economy in human history. You were the safest that you ever been, ever in your life, and you had the greatest energy independence ever in human history, in United States history. So how was he a threat to the republic then? He was a threat to you. That's why you was fucking with him the whole entire time now he was there. And the same media that lied about Joe Biden being okay and everything's going on and he's the greatest fucking president, and all you motherfuckers that told everybody to vote for him, all you liars, is the same people that kept saying all that shit about Donald Trump that was a fucking lie. And all the people see it now. So now it's up. The jig is up. The grift is exposed. We know none of you motherfuckers are really leaders, and someone is your puppet master. We're going to put Donald Trump in office. Doesn't matter who you pick. We not fucking with none of them. None of them. It's over.
Let me ask you a question. Would you vote for it?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm going to just be real honest with this. She's a black woman.
Yeah.
Because they skin folk, not Kim folk.
I think it goes back to what somebody was saying, where it's not voting for someone, but majority will vote for somebody else just.
Hold on. Let me line this out.
I think majority.
Is it only because she a black woman?
Yeah.
Do you not see how that's a bad idea?
Elaborate.
Okay, so we're in 3 proxy wars with some of the most powerful leaders in the world. She failed at the border, in which we have an estimation of 15 to 20 million people illegally into this country. That is literally overtaking and bankrupting Chicago, to the tune of over $400 million per year, and they are in a deficit. Oakland is going out of business. San Francisco, ditto. California, $65 billion deficit. New York, they're literally cutting trash, in which they are the rattiest, dirtiest city, and they've taken up resources as far as free healthcare, free hotels to the tune of $600 a day. They're literally taking over your schools. Your taxpayer dollars are going to fund the migrant crisis. She was supposed to be in charge of this. We have a failing economy. Every single day I see people getting on the internet talking about $30 an hour is the new minimum wage because inflation is fucking out of control. At one point, it was at almost 10%, depending on what city that you in. She has no policy, no record to stand on. One of the biggest things that she did in her career was lock up more black men than ever before. But we sitting here and vote her in office on identity politics. The very person that she was under as far as the president of the United States of America, she called him racist during a debate, which shows you how fake she is. And the only thing that we can stand on from a policy perspective is whether or not she's black and she's a woman. We did that during the Obama administration, and he didn't do anything for black people. As a matter of fact, y'all complain because the only person that he did, or the only group of people that he really stood for is the alphabet community, and that's his landmark thing that he's still standing on today. So the only thing that we have to stand on is identity politics. That shit didn't work with Tiffany Henyard in Dolton, Illinois. It didn't work with Karen Bass. It didn't work with Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. It didn't work with Brandon Johnson that then took over her position in Chicago. It didn't work with Andre Dickens in Atlanta. It didn't work with Eric Adams in New York. It doesn't work across the country. Every single Democratic city is a hellhole. And we sitting here talking about identity politics?
Joe Biden. Now, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? And you got some people that dick ride name brand. This is why you're not supposed to dick ride name brands. Some of you niggas feel the same way about CNN the way you feel about Jordans. Oh, I got Jordans on, so I'm fresher than you. Bitch, nobody give a fuck about Jordans. It's parts of the world where niggas look down on Jordans and have another trend. So the point about it, the thing about a trend is it's only relevant in the mind of the motherfucking observer. If I don't give a fuck about what you wearing, bitch, your outfit is not valuable to me. So some of y'all niggas feel the same way about CNN that you feel about Jordans. But I'm going to tell you why a picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't give a fuck what nobody said. First of all, bitch, I have watched these rallies. This is a Joe Biden rally. This motherfucker look like, man, this nigga rally is emptier than my 8th grade basketball games and football games. Literally. This is a Joe Biden rally. This is a Donald Trump rally. Now, why is this important? You're not about to fucking tell me that Joe Biden beat Donald Trump. Motherfucker. Listen, if somebody knocked me into a coma 30 years ago, and I just woke up out of my coma this year, and they said, who do you think is going to win this election? And I had no clue of what the fuck was going on. And I looked at the support from the rallies. I would logically have to conclude that it would be Donald Trump. Period. So it's no way that the news better get on national television and tell me Joe Biden won. Period. Because even if we say, fuck it, we don't think y'all cheated, even though we know you're trying to cheat. Bitch, we seen the level of support. Joe Biden has not gotten any motherfucking support at them rallies, man. Not now one of them bitches.
When we told you, when they was hiding him in the basement, when he wasn't doing press conferences and he wasn't talking to everybody, we told you something was wrong with him when he was falling, walking up the flight of stairs. When he stopped on a bike and he fell over. We told you something was wrong with him. Nobody wanted to believe us. When we told you his son was a crackhead and a pedophile, nobody wanted to believe us, but then they had to tell you that laptop is real. So yes, he is a human sex trafficker, a crackhead, and a money laundering criminal. His son. And he is alleged to be that with his son too as well. You know why? Because his daughter said he raped her in the shower. Oh, and her diary was confirmed. How much more do you need to see? Let me tell you something. It's not Joe Biden's age. Because if he had policies that were better than Donald Trump, he could be dead. He could be dead. They would choose him. It's because his policies suck. His policies are the Democrat policies, the same policies as fucked up Black America. Now it's fucked up America as a total whole. So this is the reason why you're seeing what you're seeing now. It's not because, oh, Joe Biden's old, so they don't want Joe Biden in no more. No, it's because Democrat policies fuck up everything. That's the reason why he gotta go. It don't matter who you put there. We not fucking with none of them.
I'm only soft when I like somebody. The rest of y'all get this gangster shit, bitch.